Hi, this is Geri and welcome to my channel Geri In Stitches, where I share with you my sewing adventures. And in this episode, I'm going to share with you my shaving foam marble dyeing project. Ta-da! So I did my shaving foam marble dyeing on this Durban jumpsuit by Nielsen patterns. And I want to give a big shout out to Nielsen for including me in a collaboration with different makers featuring their different versions of the Durban jumpsuit. And I chose to make mine with this shaving foam marble dyeing technique. This is a great sewing pattern for a jumpsuit, and if you want to check it out, you can find the link in the description box below. And if you want a full sewing pattern review, you can go to my blog. You can find my website at geriinstitches.com. See you there as well. And in the meantime, this video is going to be basically focusing on the marble dyeing technique with shaving foam. So I'm bringing this closer to you so that you can see the details of the marbling patterns that are created with the help of shaving foam. And I will show you also the details of the marbling on my top. Very pretty and also very easy to do, especially if you are applying it to a garment that is already ready-made or ready to wear. Actually, my daughter dyed this beauty with a little help and guidance from mommy. So dyeing this jumpsuit was a little bit more ambitious, mainly because I had to make sure that the fabric pieces can lay flat on the shaving cream when I'm dyeing it. So that's a consideration that you have to keep in mind if you want to do this technique on any of your garments. So for example, if you have a ready-made garment and it's filled with gathers, or it is really shaped in a fitting way around the curves of the body, then the marble dyeing may not be so effective. But if you are sewing something from scratch, then this is my solution with this jumpsuit. The process would sort of be like a three-step process. So the first step would be what I would call preparation sewing, which involves preparing the different fabric pieces before marble dyeing. The second step would be the actual marble dyeing itself. And the third step would be sewing up all the different marble dyed fabric pieces together to make this garment. And if all that just sounds like complete mumbo jumbo to you and you don't care for anything that I just said, and all you want to do is just marble dye some t-shirts with some shaving foam, then grab your shaving foam, grab your t-shirts, and let's jump right in. Just keep in mind that the technique that I'm showing you can be applied to t-shirts. You will see me in the video working, dyeing this bodice, but you know, just pretend it's a t-shirt. And remember that the t-shirt has two sides that you need to dye. After dyeing the first side, you need to dye the other side. That's it. Let's go. Okay, here are some of the things that we need to get started. Of course, the shaving foam. Get the foam or the cream, not the gel. And oh yeah, for this t-shirt, this is a kid-size t-shirt, and I used about 1 can of shaving foam. And for an adult size, just to be safe, grab 2 cans. For this full-on jumpsuit, I used about between 5 to 6 cans of shaving foam. It's also tremendously helpful if you can get some kind of squeegee and also a spatula so that you can maneuver the shaving foam easily. These squirt bottles to contain your dyes are extremely helpful for applying the color. Now, there are, I think, 3 colors on this t-shirt, and there are about like 10 colors on my jumpsuit. But you can also just use 1. And the amount of dye that you need is actually not that much. I would prepare bottles of dye that are maybe 125 milliliters, and that's all you need. You don't really need a lot of dye. So what kind of dye to use? Actually, it's completely up to you. You can use natural dyes or like me, for these two projects, you can use RIT dye. I find it very easy to use, very easy to mix. And you can also use whatever commercial dye that you have on hand. Just make sure that you are following the instructions in preparation for whatever dye that you have. Also, a bowl like this is very useful to mix the shaving foam with some water before you lay it down on the flat surface or your work surface, and make sure that you have a plastic cover to cover up your work surface. I'm going to be working on the floor. You'll see it in the video. And what I have covering the floor is this shower curtain, which I bought from the dollar store. So those are basically the things that you need. And oh yes, you would need some kind of stylus. I forgot about this. This is basically like a satay stick that I used to create the marble patterning on the shaving foam. You will see it in the video. If you don't have something like this, maybe a toothpick or a chopstick. And you can also experiment with a wide tooth comb if you have something like this. But if you don't have anything special, this is a key tool. The first thing to do is to get your dyes ready. If using RIT dye, then into 125 milliliters of water goes a half tablespoon of salt, and then about half to 1 tablespoon of dye. Mix it all up and then pour it into squirt bottles, and then move on to prepare other colors if required. Then in a mixing bowl, spray out a whole can of shaving foam or more if needed. And shaving foam right out of the can is quite dense. So add about a half cup of water and mix it in thoroughly with a spatula to lighten the consistency of the foam. What we're aiming for is the consistency similar to heavy whipped cream. And as you can see, it's changing the more I mix. And this is about the right texture now for easier handling of the foam. Prep your work surface by lining it with a plastic sheet, then dump the foam onto the sheet and spread it out with a spatula. I am looking to cover an area big enough to accommodate the size of my fabric pieces or garment. I also make sure that there's at least a depth of about 1 centimeter for this layer of foam. Then a squeegee comes in really helpful here to even out the surface of the foam. You can apply as many colors as you want on the shaving foam and however you want. The main tip is to resist over application of colors. What I mean is to make sure to leave some white or negative space so that the marbling patterns have space to develop. I'm going for layers of rainbow colors, and once I have these layers roughly demarcated, I also mix a little of each color throughout the whole shaving foam area by simply sprinkling drops of each color on the whole foam canvas. And I find that this produces more interesting marbling patterns. The marbling is done with a stylus, which is basically a stick that you can drag across the shaving foam. This starts to produce marbling patterns, and I begin by sliding the stick in vertical lines. Then I move on to making horizontal lines. The main tip here is to resist over marbling because too much movement through the dyes might develop a murkiness in the over mixing of the colors together. The third and last pass that I make are these S swirls that I repeat throughout the foam canvas. This marbling can also be done with different tools like a wide tooth comb, and it's fun experimenting with different marbling strokes and techniques. Place your fabric pieces or garments right sides facing down onto the marbled shaving foam. If you are dyeing fabric pieces and not a completed garment, then I highly suggest closing all the raw edges of the fabric pieces before arriving at this stage. This can be done with a zigzag stitch on your regular machine or with a serger or overlocker. When laying the fabric or garments onto the shaving foam, it has to be done gently and gingerly. It's also helpful to put on some gloves at this point and pat the fabric onto the shaving foam to make sure that the fabric is absorbing the dyes properly. After this is done, then wait between 10 to 15 minutes for the dyes to sink into the fibers. So we've finally arrived at my favorite step in the whole process, which is removing the excess foam to reveal the marbling patterns that we've just created. So peel the fabric pieces or garments off the shaving foam and turn them right sides facing up. And then with the help of a squeegee, scrape the excess foam from the fabric pieces or garment. The trick is that you would need a protected work surface large enough to lay your fabric pieces or garments on in order to scrape off the foam, which will have dye color in it. So this surface also needs to be covered with a plastic sheet. It's immensely gratifying scraping off the foam because you can immediately see the marbling patterns that we've created, and it's oh so good! If your dyeing product comes with a dye fixative, then it's time to apply it. I like to squirt it on over a wire grid and then let it marinate for 20 minutes. Then I hand wash the fabric pieces or garments and dry them. If you have more fabric pieces to dye, or if you want to dye the back side of your t-shirt or ready-made garment, then the shaving foam can be reused. Here you see me recycling the scraped off foam from before to add on an extension for dyeing longer pieces of fabric. I'm also reapplying the colors onto the reused shaving foam canvas, and then I repeat the whole marbling process again by making vertical lines and then the horizontal lines, then the final pass of S-swirls. You are seeing me marble dye the facing pieces of my Durban jumpsuits now. If you are dyeing the back side of your t-shirt, you would do the same as before, but I highly recommend placing a plastic sheet or cardboard piece between the front and back t-shirt to prevent the dye colors from bleeding back to front. After dyeing, all the fabric pieces or garments need to be hand washed quickly in cold water, then dried in the dryer. After this, the fabric pieces of my Durban jumpsuit are sewed up together for the final step of creation. You may be thinking, hey, this girl didn't dye the pants portion of her jumpsuit. So I'm adding that whole process here compressed into a 20-second video, which is a reel that you can see on my Instagram account. Marble dyeing has been a huge discovery for me, and I confess to be completely addicted, and I hope I inspire you to do some marble dyeing as well. I also marble dyed a rainbow sun hat to go with my rainbow Durban jumpsuit, and this joyful outfit deserves a joyful dance. So thanks so much for joining me this week. Please remember to subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up, ring that bell for notifications, and I'll see you real soon. As usual, I am ending off with a short blooper reel, and happy dancing, happy sewing, happy dyeing, guys!
It's a great sewing pattern for a jumpsuit, and if you're interested in the Durban, yes, if you have